Hello and welcome to Department Profiles. I'm Mark Crosby of Quincy Access Television. Thank you, as always, for joining me here at the QATV studios. Department Profiles looks at various departments, various services in the city of Quincy and helps you to make use of these programs and stay informed. Spending time with me today is a community liaison. His name is Damien Otar, correct?
Correct.
Oh, beautiful. And Damien is actually relatively new to the city because you're filling, well, relatively new, almost a year here in the city of Quincy. But you're filling the role of community liaison. And I guess talk about that. We're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Talk about how that role, well, not so much how that role came about. That role came about as a result of the Quincy City Council meeting and realizing that a position such as this was necessary in the city. Then you, if you will, answered the call and you applied for the position, you were hired. I guess talk about the importance of this kind of department, this kind of position in, I guess, the city of Quincy and maybe in any municipality.
Sure. Well, thanks a lot, Mark, for having me. So just some clarity, I've been living in Quincy for quite some time, about 24 years now, but this is a brand new role. And so I've been in the role since June of last year, so about 8 months, but yes, close to a year. So this role is extremely important because it's really assisting the residents of Quincy get good quality access to the services that are here. And it's really working with all the stakeholders throughout the city in making sure that that happens. Earlier, before we started, I was saying to you that oftentimes there's information that is put out through different platforms as to the existence of certain services. But a lot of the residents, Quincy has over 101,000 residents. And so oftentimes people are not aware of what's here. And so my role is to ensure that the residents get really good quality access to those services.
And what made you qualified for this position? I know because I know your background, but the folks at home might not.
Right. So prior to entering this role, I worked for a little over 20 years in the mental health space, providing social services. Worked with a variety of individuals throughout those 20 odd years, children, families, young adults, and really addressing needs that are in the community. So I have a lot of community outreach experience, working with people with a variety of needs, but particularly in the mental health and substance abuse space.
And talk about your podcast. You've had podcasts, you've had a series in the past.
Yes, I have. And it's really, it really focused on mental health and wellness, talking about just how to function in a way that is healthy, more so from a mental and emotional space within a vast changing world. There's just so much going on right now. I don't think there is anyone that is inoculated from all the various challenges over the world, really. I mean, all you have to do is turn on the television or just turn on your cell phone. There are just so many things and they're all happening all at the same time. And so I think it's really important that people have a safe space to really process what's going on and understanding their place in all of what's going on.
I think for me to say that physical health has always been known. Mental health has not, and that is changing as well. It should change because mental health is just as important as physical health.
Yeah, it's funny because I've spent some time thinking about this, and one of the reasons is that prior to now, when people hear of the term mental health, they subconsciously exclude the word health and they just think of mental. And so the moment they hear that, no one wants to be associated with mental. So there wasn't really a fruitful space to process what mental health is. But I think that, and this is one of the upsides to social media, I think there's just been so much more information that's available to people that they're beginning to realize that this whole concept of mental health is very similar to that of physical health. And so people are being very intentional now about being well and what that really means. I also think that the fact that a lot of well-known figures have been coming forward and really speaking to this, allowing themselves to be vulnerable publicly, I think has given a lot of people confidence and courage to embrace mental health.
So we talked about this being about your 8th month in the position. What have you done so far in these 8 months, and what are some of your future plans?
So it was very important to me from day one to get out and about in the community.
So introduce yourself.
Introduce myself, but to introduce myself in a very strategic way, by really getting to know the man on the street, so to speak, each and every person, and but also to understand the various departments and agencies throughout the city and understand the services that they offer, because that's in essence my role, to be that bridge between the residents and these various services and agencies, but not just only to be that bridge, but to be a bridge in a way that I can ensure that people are truly utilizing the services in a way that makes sense for them. So I've been actively doing that. I've gotten to meet, I would say, close to 90% of the department heads throughout the city, and have been meeting with various agencies as well. And taking that approach, it's perhaps going to be a perennial activity, because things are constantly changing. And so I want to make sure that I am connecting on an ongoing way, and that it's not just a finite project where I'm going to get to a certain place and then I'm going to stop. I will continue to collaborate. Now, some agencies and some departments, I'm going to be much more engaged with those folks in a more routine manner because of the needs that residents have. So, for instance, issues around, safety. That's an ongoing thing. Access to healthcare, access to, utilizing the school system. These are ongoing things that people need assistance with. So I'm going to be actively in that space. In terms of sort of next steps and where I am actively now, is really being very strategic about the different communities. It's oftentimes said that Quincy is a city of neighborhoods. Each neighborhood has its own unique set of needs, and in a way has its own identity within the city. And so part of my focus is to really understand what those unique needs are and be proactive in really providing information to the residents in those respective spaces.
Now, you and I spoke about other programs that you've watched here at Quincy Access Television, notably The Sheriff, who comes in on a monthly basis. Well, The Sheriff now has an association of sheriffs that he's involved with. In your position, is there such a thing? And do you look to maybe other municipalities that have positions that are similar and either converse with them and see what they're doing, and if it's working for them and it could potentially work here in Quincy?
Actually, that's a very good question. And yes, I am happy to say that I am actually part of the Massachusetts DEI Coalition. And so it's a coalition of different cities and towns spanning from Nantucket all the way to Arlington. Has about 60 plus individuals who do similar work that I do. So we meet about twice a month, and I get to learn from them in terms of certain initiatives that they're working on in their community, some of the challenges that they're having, some of the successes that they're having. So it's very fruitful in participating in that space. So the answer to your question is yes.
And when we talk about we briefly talked about social media when the cameras started rolling, but prior to that, when we had sat down initially, we were talking a lot about social media. You're obviously, no community lives in a bubble, right? We all experience things beyond, and we have to absorb those and relate to those and act accordingly to that information. So with that said, Asian hate, Black Lives Matter, that all becomes part of what you, I guess, are attentive to. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Correct. That's one of some of the things that we're looking at. And I think that the more we have a vibrant city, the more we have a city that is focused around people having, because a lot of times when we see these social issues bubble up and play out, if you really scratch the surface and go a little deeper, you realize that people feel that they don't have access to their community. And so these other things are just symptoms of that problem.
So the issues may be different, but there's a lot of similarities.
Yes, absolutely.
It just comes to mind when we're talking about working with departments and providing that kind of connection to department heads from residents of the city to department heads. It brings up a public service announcement that we did a few years back at QATV. It was with the health department, and it was regarding rodent control. Mm-hmm. We recorded it along with the commissioner at the time in English. We did a version in Cantonese, and we did a version in Mandarin. Mm-hmm. So would that be something, in other words, to get this information out to as many folks as possible, recognizing the diversity of our city? Is that something that you would play a role in?
It depends on what the specifics are. But again, going back to the basic tenet of the role, and that is to ensure that residents have good quality access to services. So if language was a barrier in folks getting access to services, then part of my role will be to see how we can address that issue. And that's where I think a lot of the strategic alliances are so important in my role, understanding where these needs exist, so as to ensure that everyone is getting that good quality access to whatever service that the city is offering.
And we're talking city departments, but again, the Norfolk County Sheriff could be the Norfolk County Register of Deeds. I suppose you could help residents in the city connect to those agencies outside of the city limits, but yet involved in the city.
Exactly. And when I speak of stakeholders, I the way I define it is anyone who lives and or works in the city. So and ensuring that they have the best quality life. So if that means connecting someone with a service that is not necessarily within the city of Quincy, then that's what I would be doing.
And I guess moving even beyond from the city to the county to the state, how active are you with the state delegation and legislation?
Not at this moment, but I have met. Was part of my outreach strategy and continues to be. I've met with Taki Chan and really had a really good meeting with him. And, I'm looking to connect with all the other players. But at this particular point in time, my focus really is on as local as possible, which is the services that are here. What are the I'm in the beginning stages of conducting a needs assessment of these various communities. Anecdotally, I have a good enough sense of what some of the needs are, just getting plugged into the city. But I think that at this point, it's much more helpful to really delve into the details and figure out where within the city the needs are, and then begin to plug those holes.
So, for example, the city of Quincy recently held its Lunar New Year.
Yes.
So I would assume that you had involvement in there somewhere.
Yes, so funny, the leadership of Quarry was one of the first groups that I met with when I started in June, and really trying to understand that space. And I did attend the Lunar New Year celebration that year. I was ill this year, so I wasn't able to attend in person, but I did watch the sort of the reruns online.
One of the other events that happened in the city in the past was the Germantown section of the city on Martin Luther King Day would have a celebration of his life. And what struck me is that there would be a lot of young folks kind of doing their artistic interpretation of what that meant to them that day. And we covered that. But my thought in talking with you is I'd love to be able to, they performed and they practiced at this place in Germantown, but it sounds like talking to you, we could, whether it was Germantown or Marymount or North Quincy, we could bring those people into, say, let's QATV, for example, and show them how to utilize this service, because QATV is a service also.
No, I agree. I think, as I told you off camera, that I am an avid watcher of QATV and have been for many years prior to my joining this. In fact, QATV was one of the platforms that I used to really understand what was going on in the community, in the city, and I think that a lot of our residents, it would benefit them to really take advantage of that. And people are busy. They're just all about just trying to survive and live their lives, and they're just not aware. And this is one such service that I hope to share with the residents, that there is such a service that you can utilize to answer a lot of questions. I'm not a big social media fan, but in the nature of my job, I have to be online, and I see a lot of commentary sometimes and questions that people put out there. And, I've watched your program, I've watched other programs here that have actually addressed the very things that people are asking and talking about, and sort of sometimes a little misinformation, but the information was provided through QATV. Were they aware of QATV, or if they were watching, they would probably be getting that information. So that's one of the things that I would be looking to do, just to bring awareness to residents that this station is here.
Well, and when I was talking about the celebration of Martin Luther King from I think it was the Germantown Neighborhood Center, actually, that for years held celebrations, I thought how great in this community or in this section of the city just to have it there. However, let's go a step further and make sure that everyone can benefit from the, I guess in this case, talent that was happening on that very day.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Good. I'm glad you're on board with that.
Indeed.
Since you've, again, been in for almost a year, could you maybe talk about what people have approached you on? You've put yourself out there to kind of get to know the heartbeat of the city. What have people come to you with? Have they had suggestions? Have they had questions? Both?
At this point in time, I mean, not so many, well, more so questions, because it's a brand new position. And so they want to know, what is your role? What exactly do you do for the city? And I've explained that to them. But some of the things that has sort of fallen on my lap, so to speak, are sometimes people don't know what they don't know. And so part of my role is to help triage and navigate that world. And I've had incidents where people have felt that there's one particular individual. He lives in an apartment complex, and he felt targeted by a neighbor, and he felt that his race had something to do with it. And it was good to know that, even though it's not necessary, I mean, that's a private matter, but at least there was a space for him to utilize or to come to help him process the various steps that he needed to take. And he went to the mayor's office, and then the administrative folks there connected him to me. And that was a perfect example of how this role can be super, super helpful. Because in that moment, he was just frustrated, and he just needed somebody. And he also felt that when he made his first call and he was connected to the community police department, in that moment, he felt that he was just being sort of siphoned off somewhere. Because he didn't truly understand what community policing was all about. And so I was able to provide him with some education to say, no, that was actually the appropriate step for them to take, given what was presented at that moment. It wasn't quite criminal. So that's actually, it was an appropriate referral, so to speak. And I was able to just, sort of calm him down a little bit because of my background, where I've actually worked in that space of providing services to individuals within the community. And it got resolved fairly quickly and very effectively. So that's one example of how this role can be utilized. But again, it's on a more global sense. It's more, if people don't know where to turn, this is a good place to start. And then because of my relationships with the various departments and agencies, I will make the right connections.
I'm just thinking as we're sitting here about maybe the challenge to a position like yours in the global sense. We mentioned social media, but it doesn't have to be just social media. You turn on the news every night. There's certainly a lot of controversy in the news. And people absorb that and then somehow have to deal with that. So do you think your position or the need for your position is a result of, let's say, the country view or the world view at this given point?
I think a lot of that is accurate, yes. I think I said earlier, sometimes people are just so overcome by all of what's going on. And some of it, is augmented by the fact that, not everyone that lives in Quincy are from the US, and they're coming from a certain part of the world where certain things are not done the way they're done here. So that alone sort of puts them behind the 8 ball. And then you add all the other stressors on top of that. So they're not even at the starting gates as yet. And so that's part of my role, to really be sensitive to that, and but notwithstanding the challenges, be that bridge.
So
for them,
without a doubt, in the news currently is immigration. Big topic. Every day, multiple times a day, that becomes a topic. That becomes a top news story. I guess that's an example of what is out there beyond the city limits that in turn residents in the city, I guess, not only take in, but have to process and certainly react in a mindful way to it.
That's true. It's all around us. My focus is on ensuring, again, that people are informed and that people get the access to the services that we offer here, and to do that in a way that is mindful and in a way that is culturally competent.
So it's almost, I know the administration has a Department of Constituent Services.
Yes.
Very much a part of you.
Yes, we work very closely, actually. In fact, some of the calls that they get, they are able to immediately connect those calls to me because of what I do, and that it's not just reactive, but it's also being proactive.
I'm also thinking, too, with the election coming up, every year there's some kind of an election, that you might get approached on questions regarding elections and voting, in which case your connection that you made with the city clerk, Nicole Crispo, is helpful.
Correct. Again, it's about developing a working knowledge of the various departments and what they do. So a lot of what I do is triaging, but it's triaging in a way that is culturally competent where appropriate, and also triaging, not just handing off, but ensuring that that the person leaves in a better place than how they came, if that makes sense.
It's so much, everything that we're talking about, or a lot of what we're talking about, really brings me to your podcast years ago, because a lot of these key words, mindfulness, life gets better when you get better, a lot of this plays perfectly, dovetails into your role currently.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that I find very exciting about performing in this role, because it really pulls on my life experience as a person, but also my life experience as a professional. So it's really taking the same set of skills, the same acumen, the same part of just who I am as a person, but just operating on a different platform. That's all that it is for me.
We could certainly say it's building bridges.
Certainly. Indeed.
If folks would like to get in touch with you,
Yes.
phone number and an email.
So my email address is doutar, doutar, at quincyma.gov, and my telephone number is 617-376-1050.
Very good. In the closing moments of this program, anything you'd like to address that we haven't addressed already? I certainly look forward to working with your department in the future. I know you and I chatted just moments before sitting down, and the gears are already spinning, because we do think that we can work together and make a difference.
The only thing that I would like to say is that, I'm very open. I'm very open to feedback. I'm very open to ideas. This is not something that one person can accomplish, can achieve. It's all hands on deck. It's all about us working together to continue sort of moving Quincy in the right direction. And it's already heading in the right direction, but there is always room for growth and improvement.
And isn't life better that way?
Precisely.
I want to thank you. It's been a pleasure, and certainly look forward to working with you in the future.
Same here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you at home for watching, and please remember to support your local access television station, that being QATV, and support programming just like this. Take care.